Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're looking at a text that is arguably one of the most famous passages in Western history. And yet I think it's also one of the most frequently misunderstood.
Yeah.
We are opening up Matthew chapter 6.
It is famous, but you're so right. It's often read in isolation.
Right.
We have to remember where we are in the story. I mean, chapter 5 was the start of the Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes, the big ethical theory.
Theory.
Matthew 6 is the pivot. This is where Jesus stops talking about theory and starts getting into the nitty-gritty of daily life.
It really feels like the moment the rubber meets the road. He goes from blessed are the poor in spirit to, how to handle your wallet, your schedule, even your anxiety.
Precisely. And the mission for this deep dive is to look at the tension Jesus sets up here, this stark contrast between public performance and private sincerity.
And to do that, we have to look at the sources. It's not just a text of Matthew, right?
Yeah.
We're bringing in archaeology from first century Judea and some really specific notes on the Greek words being used.
Yeah, the archaeology is fascinating.
I was looking through the notes on that, and it just completely changes the mental image of this chapter. It turns it from like a religious lecture into a critique of a very specific social system.
It really does. And it starts with a warning that feels almost dangerous. Jesus basically says you can do everything right. Be the most generous person, the most prayerful, the most disciplined, and it can all count for absolutely nothing.
Zero reward.
Zero. Because, and this is the line in the sand, if you did those things to be seen by other people, you already got your payment.
And this brings us to the main character of the first half of this chapter, the hypocrite. Now, today, we use that word for someone who's fake or, judges others for things they do themselves. But the original meaning was quite different.
It's radically different. The Greek word is hypocrisy. And in the first century, this wasn't really a moral judgment. It was a job title.
A job title?
Yeah, it literally meant an actor.
Like a theater actor.
A stage performer. Someone who wears a mask. In Greek theater, one actor might play 3 different roles just by switching masks.
Oh, wow.
So when Jesus calls these religious leaders hypocrites, he isn't just calling them liars, he's calling them performers. He's saying they're treating spirituality like a stage play for an audience of humans.
That reframes the whole chapter. It's not about the action, it's about the audience you're playing for. And he breaks this down into, the 3 pillars of piety: giving, prayer, and fasting.
These were the big 3. If you were a devout Jewish person in the first century, these were the markers of your life.
So let's start with the first one, giving. Almsgiving. The text has this vivid, almost comical image of people sounding a trumpet before they give money. Was that real?
It sounds ridiculous, but yeah, it's anchored in reality. There's sort of 2 ways to look at it. First, during big festivals, charitable giving was a public spectacle. It's possible that shofar blasts, ram's horns, were used to announce when it was time to give.
So it's like a spotlight moment. The horn blows, and everyone looks to see who's walking up to the box.
Exactly. But there's a second layer. Archaeologists have found these collection boxes in the temple area called shofarot. They were literally trumpet-shaped.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, narrow at the top, wide at the bottom. And they were made of metal or stone, so if you were a wealthy person, you wouldn't drop in a few small coins. You'd take a whole handful of heavy silver or copper coins.
And just dump them in.
And it would make a huge racket. It would ring out, and everyone in the courtyard would turn their heads and think, wow, listen to how much that person just gave.
That is the performance.
That's it.
And Jesus counters this with something that sounds physiologically impossible. Do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing.
It's a brilliant hyperbole. He's saying the secrecy has to be so deep that it bypasses your own ego. Usually, even if no one sees us do something good, we pat ourselves on the back.
Right. I'm a good person.
Jesus says don't even do that. It's almost like you give and then you immediately forget it even happened. Because if you dwell on it, you're taking the receipt.
The receipt.
The text uses this very specific commercial language, apichus. It means paid in full. If you get the applause or even just the self-satisfaction, that's your receipt. The transaction is closed.
But if you do it in secret,
then the Father, who sees in secret, repays you. The sources link this back to Proverbs. Whoever is kind to the poor lends to the Lord. The idea is, by refusing human applause, you're transferring the debt to God.
you're letting God owe you.
Which is a much better investment strategy.
Okay, let's move to the second pillar. Prayer. This one's sensitive.
Okay.
Jesus says, when you pray, go into your inner room and shut the door. Now, I've heard people use this to argue against, public prayer in church. But that can't be right. Jesus himself prayed in public.
You're right, he did, and the early church was constantly praying together. The inner room here, the tamion, was probably a storage room, a closet. It was really the only place in a first century home with a door you could actually lock.
So the point isn't that public prayer is bad.
No, the point is, again, the motive. He talks about the hypocrites standing on street corners.
Right.
I mean, picture the geography. The streets in Jerusalem were narrow, they were winding. If you stood at a major intersection during the hour of prayer, you blocked traffic. You forced people to navigate around your piety.
You literally made yourself the center of attention, the selfie version of prayer.
Exactly. But then he pivots to a different group. He warns against babbling like the pagans.
What does it mean?
It's fascinating. The Greek word here implies heaping up empty phrases. In the Roman world, prayer was often seen as like a legal contract or a magic spell. You had to get the names of the gods exactly right, and you had to repeat them sometimes for hours to kind of wear the god down.
So it's like filing a complaint with a bureaucracy. If you fill out enough forms, eventually they have to listen.
That's a great way to put it. It was manipulative. They thought many words would force the deity to act, and Jesus just says, stop. Your Father knows what you need before you even ask.
That shifts the dynamic entirely. You aren't informing God of news he doesn't have. You're connecting with the Father. And to model this, he gives us the Lord's Prayer.
We could spend a whole series on this, but just look at the archetype of it. It's split perfectly in half.
The first half is all Godward.
Yes. Hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done. Notice there isn't a single personal request there. It starts by realigning your reality with God's reality. It's surrender before it's asking.
And then the pivot. Give us this day our daily bread.
That phrase, daily bread, is so loaded. For a Jewish listener, that immediately triggers a flashback to Exodus, to the manna in the wilderness.
Right, where they could only gather enough food for one day if they tried to hoard it.
It rotted. So asking for daily bread is a prayer of radical reliance. It's saying, I trust you for today. I'm not asking for a warehouse of bread for the next 10 years, just today.
And then we get the hardest part of the prayer. Forgive us our debts, as we also have forgiven our debtors.
In the original language, debts means moral obligations, sins. But notice the condition. It's the only part of the prayer that Jesus circles back to explain at the end.
Yeah, he doubles down on it. He says, if you don't forgive others, your Father won't forgive you. That feels incredibly harsh for a message about grace.
It is harsh. But the logic is consistent. Grace isn't a commodity you just store up. It's a current. It has to flow through you. And if you block the outflow, if you refuse to forgive your neighbor, you essentially clog the pipe.
So you can't receive what you aren't willing to give.
You cannot. You can't have a vertical relationship with God while your horizontal relationships are broken.
Okay, that's heavy. Let's move to the third pillar. Fasting.
This one is more foreign to us today, but in the first century, some Pharisees fasted twice a week. And the text says they would disfigure their faces.
What does that actually look like? Are we talking about making a sad face?
We're talking stage makeup. They might put ashes on their heads, leave their hair uncombed, wear old sackcloth, and deliberately not wash their faces so they looked pale and exhausted.
So everyone walking by would think, wow, look how much he's suffering for God, so holy.
And Jesus says, wash your face. In that culture, putting oil on your head and washing your face was what you did before a party. It was grooming. You did it to look healthy and happy.
So the instruction is basically to look normal.
Totally normal. The goal is invisibility. If you're fasting, it should be a secret between you and God. If you make yourself look miserable so people admire you, well, you've already gotten your reward.
This theme of secrecy really sets up the next section. We move from religious acts to something that hits everyone. Money. The treasures in heaven passage.
Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth. And he lists the enemies of wealth: moth and rust.
I always pictured a rusty bicycle when I read this. But gold and silver don't really rust like iron, do they?
That's a great point. The Greek word here is brusis, which just means eating away or erosion. But archaeology gives us a really cool insight here. In places like Capernaum, they've dug up these first century houses. People didn't have banks.
Right.
So they hid their valuables in the walls or under the floor.
Stone safe deposit boxes.
Pretty much. But they've found hordes of coins from that era, and after 2,000 years in the ground, they're often corroded into useless lumps of green and black metal. The soil literally eats the money.
So rust destroys means that even your most durable currency is biodegradable.
And moth, of course, refers to clothes. Elaborate robes were a huge part of your net worth. But insects eat them. So he's saying, look at your portfolio. Bugs eat the clothes, corrosion eats the coins, and thieves break through the walls. It's all incredibly insecure.
Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. He's diagnosing an anxiety problem. If your heart is tied to things that can rot, your heart will be in a constant state of low-grade panic.
Which leads him to that strange little metaphor about the eye, the lamp of the body.
This part always confuses me. If your eye is healthy, your body's full of light. If it's bad, it's full of darkness. Is this about eyesight?
No, it's a Hebrew idiom that doesn't really translate well. To have a good eye meant to be generous. You looked at the world and saw needs you could meet. You were open-handed.
And a bad eye.
A bad eye, or an evil eye, meant you were stingy. Deuteronomy uses this exact phrase. If you have a bad eye toward your needy brother, you clutch your resources. You give him nothing.
So he's saying stinginess isn't just a financial choice. It's a spiritual darkness.
Yes. If you view the world through a lens of scarcity and greed, your entire inner life just goes dark. You can't see God, you can't see your neighbor, all you can see is what you might lose.
And this brings us to the ultimate ultimatum, the two masters.
You cannot serve God and mammon.
Mammon. That's a word we don't hear much anymore. Is it just a synonym for money?
It's the Aramaic word for property, wealth, profit. But Jesus personifies it. He treats mammon like a rival god. And the logic here is based on Roman slavery laws.
How so?
In our modern economy, you can have a day job and a side hustle. You can have two bosses. But in the Roman world, a slave was the exclusive property of one master.
Oh.
You legally could not belong to two people at once. It was an impossibility.
So Jesus is saying you can't freelance for God while you're owned by money.
Exactly. You have to choose who owns you.
But that creates a problem. If I choose God and I stop hoarding treasure and I stop serving mammon, how do I survive? I still have to eat.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the final section, the emotional climax, anxiety.
It is. The Greek word for worry is merimnot. It means to be pulled apart or fragmented. It's that feeling of being scattered because you're trying to control the future.
And to solve this, Jesus points to nature. He says, look at the birds.
Look at the birds of the air. Now remember, they're on a hillside in Galilee. This area is a major migration route between Europe and Africa. You'd see storks, ravens, huge flocks passing through.
So he's probably pointing to actual birds flying overhead as he's talking.
Very likely. And his argument is specific. They don't sow, reap, or gather into barns. In other words, they don't farm. Farming is an attempt to control the future. Birds they work hard, they forage all day, but they operate on a daily cycle of trust.
And then the flowers. Consider the lilies of the field.
Most botanists think he means the scarlet crown anemones. In the spring, the Galilean hills are just carpeted in these red, poppy-like flowers. They're stunning.
And he compares them to King Solomon.
Solomon was the gold standard for wealth, the best-dressed king in history. And Jesus says, look at that wild weed. Solomon in all his glory couldn't match the texture and color of that one flower.
But then he adds that really dark detail. He says the grass is thrown into the furnace.
That's the reality check. In ancient Judea, wood was scarce. People used dried grass and withered wildflowers for fuel. They were here today, beautiful and alive, and tomorrow they were literally set on fire to bake bread.
So he's saying, these flowers are temporary, they're fuel, and yet God paints them with this incredible beauty.
It's an argument from the lesser to the greater. If God lavishes such attention on a wildflower that's going to be burned in 24 hours, how much more will he take care of you, a human being who lives forever?
Oh, you of little faith.
It's a gentle rebuke. He's saying your anxiety is a logic problem. You're acting like an orphan in the universe, not a child with a father.
So what's the solution?
Yeah.
As a command, seek first the kingdom.
It's a reordering of priorities. He says the pagans, the people who don't know God, run after food and clothes. That's their primary chase. Jesus says, no, you make the kingdom your primary chase. Pursue God's way of doing things. His justice, his generosity, and all these other things will be added to you.
It's interesting he doesn't say, seek the kingdom and you won't need food. He says the food will be added.
Exactly. God knows you need to eat. He created you with a stomach. The promise is that if you take care of God's business, he will take care of your maintenance.
And the chapter ends with this very practical, almost funny advice. Do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself.
Each day has enough trouble of its own. I love that line. It's so realistic. He isn't promising a trouble-free life. He's just saying, you have problems today, deal with them. But don't borrow trouble from next Tuesday.
You don't have the grace for next Tuesday yet.
You only have the grace for today. It circles right back to the daily bread.
So if we zoom out and look at Matthew 6 as a whole, it's a cohesive argument about where we find our security.
It is. It starts with the temptation to find security in public approval, performing your religion so people like you. And Jesus says, stop that. Do it in secret. Find security in the Father's approval.
Then it moves to the temptation to find security in money-hoarding assets. And Jesus says, stop that. It's going to rot. Find security in the Father's provision.
It's a call to move from a life of performance and anxiety to a life of secrecy and trust.
But that is a terrifying jump to make. To stop managing your own PR and stop hoarding your own resources, you really have to believe someone is on the other end ready to catch you.
That is the crux of faith, isn't it? Is the Father real, or is he just a nice idea? If he's real, you can afford to be generous and you can afford to be secret.
And that leads us to a final thought to leave you with. We've talked a lot about this secret reward.
We have.
So here is the question for your week. If you did something incredibly good, you gave a huge gift, you helped someone in a major way, and you knew for a fact that no human being would ever know about it, not your spouse, not your friends, would you still feel like it counted?
Or do you still need that receipt?
Something to chew on.
Yeah.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.